What's up?
Not a lot. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm trying to slowly chip away at the business side of stand-up comedy, just um going through all the commission and stuff like that on my tour.
Are you your own, what is the right term for this? Are you your own manager?
No, I have a manager and an agent, but they just send me and I like to double check. It's
So you're
weird.
you're your own backup accountant then.
Yes, I don't have anybody like managing all of that. No, I don't trust any. I don't trust people.
Well, and getting to know stand-up comedians over time, that's one element of the business that a lot of people don't fully comprehend as they're getting into things. You're not doing open mics thinking about the fact that you're going to have to tabulate how much you're making per year and then turn that number into the IRS at the end of the count.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like, whatever. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, hey, wasn't I sold that out? Like, why did I only get this much? Then it's like 2 years later, I notice it. So I try to keep up, but it's overwhelming.
Oh, you mean the deadbeat comedy club owner who decides to delay payment by 2 years?
Yeah. I mean, I got paid. It just wasn't for the sellout. And I was like, I did better than that. Wasn't I supposed to get this? And it's too late. But yeah. Anyway,
How interesting.
that's
Well,
bogging my mind down.
I'm sorry to hear that. One thing, or there's several things that actually jump out to me as I was preparing for this conversation over the last couple of hours. One, it's not often that I speak with somebody whose last name rhymes with my last name. My last name is Elling. Your last name is Stelling. You actually went out on this one, though, because throughout my entire life, if somebody doesn't know any better, they mispronounce my last name, Ealing. I feel like that's much more difficult to do with the S and the T at the front of Elling. So,
Yeah,
congrats.
there's definitely been spelling, Sterling,
Oh,
Starling.
people throw an extra R in there, huh?
Spelling. Yeah, I've definitely had it. It seems so easy. Spelling. Like spelling, but with a T.
Yeah, I used to say like smelling, but without the SM. Similar strategy there, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
I also noticed that you and I lived in Chicago at the same time. You were there for around 5 years from late 2000 aughts into 2012 or so. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, oh 07 to 11.
Okay.
I was working at Chicago Bagel Authority and then Dollop Cafe up in Buena Park. Those were my haunts. And and then just doing comedy all around the city, but
Just
um
going to open mic after open mic in Logan Square, Lincoln Park,
I
just
didn't
all over
I
the.
you know I didn't do a ton of open mics. I got gifted a Sunday show by Jenna Friedman and Sarah King, and I ran that with the Putterboss sisters. So I kind of had my Sunday workout room if I wanted it. I didn't really do a ton of open mics. Could probably count them on my hand.
Where was the showcase?
It was at Town Hall Pub in Boys Town,
Oh, yeah.
which I think is now, I don't know. Somebody sent me a picture just yesterday. They're like, here's what it is now. And at first it was a weed dispensary, and then yeah, I think Will Miles, who also used to do that show all the time. I'm gonna see what it is. He sent it yesterday. I mean, why is my phone so slow? It's called Sway. Oh, it's a cannabis dispensary.
Okay.
Sway this way.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that got legalized a few years ago. It's crazy. I moved out of Chicago in late 2014. The amount of turnover in a decade is insane. You're almost surprised when you see a restaurant that you used to love that's actually still in place there.
Yeah. Even like walking around, I remember like looking, I didn't, I'm not like a real estate person, but I think I remember like seeing something or like, oh, how much would that be like to move into that condo? And when you look it up, I think we were in Logan Square, it was like LA prices. I was like shocked.
Yeah,
I'm
we
like,
lived in Ukrainian Village, which is just south of Wicker Park, and Wicker Park Bucktown was the same thing where it's like, wait a second, why would somebody pay $1 million for this little two-bedroom shanty that is right next to the L?
I know it shakes when people when the train goes by.
Yeah, I lived next to the blue line for a little bit. It's unnerving until your body adjusts to it, and then you sleep like a baby. It was a surprising and very enjoyable turn of events. I could sleep through anything for about a 3 year span,
That's nice, a little sound machine.
something like that. Whenever somebody would stay over, though, they're like, "How in the world do you do this each and every day?" I'm like, "I don't know, man. The body is an amazing thing. You adjust, and then you thrive
Sure.
through it, I guess."
And now you need one of those beds you put a quarter in that shakes.
Well, I got married, and that's what we decided to go with to spice things up. It was either that or pay $10,000 for a Serta adjustable.
I know somebody was just telling me that their parents have slept on a waterbed for like their entire lives, which is so funny to me. I'm like, wait, I don't know how that's not been proven to be good. I don't know if it's good or bad. I thought they were the coolest things on the planet.
Yeah, and then you realize the amount of upkeep that's required, and it's like you've always got to have duct tape or something along those lines on hand because the bed just springs a leak, and all of a sudden you're either sleeping on the floor or a wooden bed frame.
Yeah. Uh, it's
So,
so weird.
so I also saw through your Instagram account, are you a professional is not the right word. You're a field hockey player who represents the US in field hockey and tournaments around the world?
Yeah, I play for the U.S. Women's Masters team, which means I'm on the women's 35 team, so women 35 and older. 35 to 40 is the team I'm on because there's an age group for each. There are right now the older women's team, the 55s to 65s are playing in New Zealand right now. So I've tried out the last couple years and I made the team both times. So I did the Pan Am Continental Cup last December in Buenos Aires
Hmm.
and then Cape Town, South Africa this year. We did better in Argentina, but we lost every game this World Cup.
In South Africa?
hmm Yeah, it's not like we weren't obliterated, but we did lose every game. It was one of those things too where it's like, I mean, it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I will say that the program is like still growing, and one of our main setbacks, I would say, is sometimes we only get one or two practices together before the tournament, whereas some of the other countries have been playing together for much longer, or there's, incredible at field hockey, not to take away from their skill, they really are, but they just kind of have more of a gel to their team, have a little more. But yeah, so it feels kind of more like a ragtag pickup game.
How long have you played field hockey for?
I started in third grade.
What? I didn't even
Mhm.
realize that they had kids playing field hockey. We saw it for the first time during the Summer Olympics a few months ago. Of course, my kids are 10 and 8. They watch like two games and all of a sudden they're experts on field hockey. They're also like, "Dad, we want to play field hockey." I'm like, "I've never even seen adults play field hockey, much less kids. Maybe it's an Ohio versus Texas thing."
It's a very fun game. I mean, I love the game. There's no left-hand sticks, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, you could get your kids some sticks for Christmas and start hitting around. Or
Whatever that inbounds play is, where the ball is coming in from behind the goal, I guess that is sheer
yeah,
chaos. Like that
yeah,
alone feels like it's worth trying out.
yeah. Defensive penalty corner is what that is. Like if it hits if there's any sort of foul within the circle, the offense gets a chance to insert it. It has to come out of the circle and then go back in. But yeah, basically. It's a direct shot with four people I was the fly this tournament, so I fly out first to the ball and I wear a wire mask and everything. But my finger is still I got drilled actually by I think it was the Netherlands. I ran into them while we were sightseeing the next day and they were like, "Oh my gosh, was that you?" And I was like, "Yes."
So the fly is trying to stop the goal from being scored then.
Yeah, you're trying to disrupt as much as possible for them before they can get the shot off, or yeah, to block the shot or put pressure on the ball so they flub it.
Is the mangled finger, is that the worst injury you've ever experienced playing field hockey?
The mangle finger stinks. It like went all the way through. I'm still like experiencing it's like a weird. whatever that is. It
Oh
hit
yeah,
me,
that little bump right there.
and it's through my glove too. I mean, I wear really thick gloves.
Uh,
But yeah, I've had some bad injuries. Big, of course, bruises like that look like the ball. Sometimes they even have like the dimples in it. Um, and I've had, I think it was like 5 stitches on one of these eyes underneath busted my eye open, and then maybe one right here from a stick. A girl followed through and hit my head with a stick. But that was glued together. But this eyebrow one needed stitches.
the
So.
one in the forehead, you just took some Gorilla
This
Glue or
was just
something.
glued, yeah. Because we were flying to play in like a rec tournament in Germany the next day. So we were playing the national club tournament and then the next day flying to Germany for like a fun club tournament. So I was like, let's just glue it. But yeah, other than that, my fingers are gnarly and sometimes my moneymaker.
Yeah. Well, I play beach volleyball and the fingers tend to be the biggest casualty. Like you can see this
I
pinky
bet.
as much as this pinky straightens. And it was broken. I was just stepping in these we were playing 2-on-2, my guy friends and I, and there was a group of girls next to us and they were -1 player and I think we had an extra. And so they're like, "Hey, would you guys mind subbing in to play while whichever one of you is sitting out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure," not realizing that one of these women's players was like a former professional over in Europe. And it's a lower net too. And I'm not
Okay.
necessarily saying that was better than any of these women. I probably wasn't, but very first point, I mean, she was clearly trying to swing as hard as possible to prove a point to me that I'm not better than them. And of course, I stick my hands up and it just, I don't know if it shattered my pinky. I probably should have gone into a doctor, but instead I just had it mangled up for a while and gradually got some of the flexion back. But all these years later, when I do the hook 'em horns hand sign, it looks like one of the horns was built by a coyote or something.
Yeah, since I've been playing since third grade, there was a part of it that was in gym class growing up, and so when the boys got to play with us and like learn the game in gym class, I had a moment like that where I was like, let me show off how hard I can drive it, and then the guy I had a crush on, I hit it in his ankle, and that it blew up immediately. It hurt so bad. I felt terrible because I was trying to like show off, but then I hurt the guy that I liked right in the ankle, and I was like, oh God. Ah.
I take it things never went any further than that.
No, he's back home and or in Ohio, happily married. I like his wife. We all knew each other growing up, a small town. But yeah, it's fun to play sports. I like having other things than just stand up to, um, it's important to expand outside of just comedy. And I like meeting other women who have different jobs. And I do play co-ed too with some guys, but um, it's just nice to have a hobby and get your mind off of it and be around human beings that aren't stand-up comedians.
Well, look, I mean the stand-up comedy the larger population, but also your individual cliques are obviously important too, just in terms of that tribalism. But you want to find other tribes where there is a sort of shared interest, but you can also get your mind away from, in your case, your day job. I mean, this is part of what you do for a living. So to be able to break away and not have to think about it too much, I'm sure helps you when you actually get back into that world.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Sometimes I take like being in Cape Town for so long, I did feel rusty when I came back.
Mm.
Stand-up is a lot about repetition and just sort of getting it in your bones,
Yeah.
whatever your current hour or act is that you're building. And yeah, it takes practice. And so I felt a little off when I came back for different reasons, time zone, everything, change in diet. It's like, it's a different side of the world, which is pretty cool. But also, I went straight to Vegas to do Jimmy Kimmel's Club like
Mm.
2 days after I got back. So it was just sort of like right into it. Then I did my hometown theater um, in Dayton, Ohio. And that was weird for its own reasons because it's always like this added pressure of my hometown show and selling it and everybody I know and the people I'm talking about are in the crowd, and which makes other people feel weird. And
Mm.
yeah. But LA is so strange. I mean, I love living here, but also like the industry is in a very weird place post strike. It hasn't like fully recovered. There's nowhere near as much work. Everything's changing with the streamers and social media has drastically changed everything. A lot of people do a lot of work for free, and people are like severely underpaid, and you know, it's kind of like people who, I mean, we have this idea of influencers and stuff, but it's like a lot of it's free. So like anything in life, like as a stand-up, when you first start, you don't have any power. So you're taking the lowest form of payment to get stage time. And then as you build, the only way to get power or bargaining for a higher rate or more money of ticket sales is to gain fans because then you have power to negotiate. So, that's a business side in itself, but you do need people looking out for you. And even when you have people looking out for you, you still have to check their work or say, hey, this deal's the same as last time. Why is that? Or is it on me or whatever? But social media has changed things so drastically. It's like it's depressing. You caught me at a depressing time. I'm sure if somebody were listening to this, they'd be like, she's sad.
Keep me the hell away from the entertainment biz. Well, it's like that across the board too. I mean, radio, this isn't as much the case now because there was a legal case, I think, that kept interns from working for free for literally 40 hours a week without getting paid a dime. But radio back in the day, the first thing I did was unpaid. And it was showing up
Yeah.
remotes and helping around at the station too for nothing, just because I was
Yeah, you wanted to
passionate
get in
about the
there.
job. And gradually you learn enough where they're like, oh, we can actually pay you the smallest amount of money humanly possible without getting in trouble with the law to have you do a little bit more work and to ask you to work past that 40 hours now. So, and it's
Yeah.
also interesting too, though, because the strike was supposed to provide protections against a lot of the things that you're so down about right now. Whether you're talking about AI taking jobs or how the
Yeah.
strippers really rip off the performers, the cast and the crew who create all this great work for them. But it sounds like, at least as it stands right now, a lot of those safeguards don't really matter a whole lot.
Yeah, I think, the word on the street about town is sort of like there's just fewer productions. What used to be like 250 at a time, it's like four. So a lot of people aren't working all across the board. From lighting to grips to designers to writers, and it's just fewer job opportunities. So a lot of times it's like I'm just lucky. Like the feedback is like you're so lucky you even got an interview, even if you didn't get the job.
Wow.
So, and even within those interviews, the feedback has been like the execs are scared. They don't want to pick the wrong thing. And when they do pick it, they have such an intense grip on it. So, I mean, I remember interviewing for a show that's getting shot now that I didn't get, and they ended up basically going with someone who would be a higher job title than me, whereas I'm like a producer. They need someone who's been an executive producer or something. They need, to give you an example, if like staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, like kind of how things go in the Writers Guild. Um, but they're basically sort of saying like I read 200 scripts and I'm taking 7 interviews. So like of course that's a huge compliment. I'm honored to be here, but that puts even more pressure on me, and they have pressure to hire people who are what they're getting feedback from their execs, which is like we need people who are really good on page. So then you're like, oh God, I hope you don't want to it's a little less like, oh yeah, I can do that and I'd be happy to be there, and more like uh wow, this is really intense. The demands that are on creatives. Um, less free feeling and creative and more like restrictive, and you need to produce. And yeah, I don't know. I always felt like even when on my first writing job, it was like, of course we're here to work. Like I'm a hard worker and I'm disciplined, but isn't it also fun? Shouldn't it be fun making something creative?
It really should. So you've produced. Obviously, you're a good writer. For anybody who has ever watched your stand up before, do you enjoy producing? Because those obviously aren't the same exact things.
Yeah, it's different. There's like, lots of roles in television and movies. And I would say like some of my favorite things I've done would be on set writing or punch up for movies. Like that's really
Mm,
fun for me
yeah,
just to have the product there and be like, how can I make this funnier? That's
yeah.
that's really quite fun. Especially if you can get a joke in that gets in the movie, or You're like, hey, I wrote that. And same goes for stand up. Like if I write for a like a bigger name stand up or something, you're like, I wrote that tag, you know? So I think it's fun. But those are less about the glory. Oftentimes you actually sign your rights away, even through the Writers Guild, um, where you won't get a credit in the movie. So there's I was in fact there was a movie that came up on Amazon the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I did punch up on this. You know, like I forgot about it. It had 3.5 stars, so I'm not gonna say which one, but um
Wait, are you not allowed to say something that you've done punch up on if you don't have an official credit?
if that's true, I have been violating that. But no, it's just more like you just kind of sign your credit away. You say, I agree, this was a round table. I was here to provide my services for this day or this day or two to offer jokes for this day. And you're paid, you're compensated for your day, but you're not getting credit in the movie.
It
So
seems so silly to me because there's how many names
I
and
know right at the end, you're like, can you just add
yes,
one more?
like you need to deny somebody just that one little bit that they can point to and say, yeah, I actually was a part of this awesome thing here.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
I think too, people do their best, like I just moved, so not everything's up on my wall, but I always try to put things to remind myself of like the fun I had. But Good Boys is a movie that I was the on-set writer for, and there's the boys. But the guys who wrote that, Lee Eisenberg and Gene Stupnitsky, they have a long history of writing together. The Office, they're like one of the things they're known for. They've both gone on to do incredible things. Um, John, the other on-set writer, and Gene wrote No Hard Feelings, a movie that's out now that came out with Jennifer Lawrence. But all that to say, they were so fun to work with. We were there every day on set, such a great experience in Vancouver. And I was able to, they offered an associate producer credit. So John and I's names are at the end of the movie. I think when people care and try to, help you out, but
well, good news for you. You're coming to a town this weekend. Shows Friday and Saturday at Creek in the Cave, 7 and 9 p.m. shows. Guess what? Austin strips away all the BS. It's just about the
yeah,
stand-up comedy here, and I guess a lot of podcasts now as well.
yeah.
You put your most recent special out on Netflix. If you didn't want me then, about a year ago. Congratulations on that, by the way. It's
Thank
hilarious.
you.
How's the latest set coming along as you come here to town here in a few days?
Yeah, I feel like it's nearing its final form. It takes me at least a year or two. I'm not a special a year person. I It definitely takes me longer. It's funny because also sometimes the feedback I love being a comics comic. Like you know, and sometimes comics will you write so fast. You always I see you doing new things. And I'm like, really? I mean, I do, I guess. I'm always trying to work new. I don't want to be the comic that you see every time and it's the same act. Like that's a big fear. But for example, a story I'm telling, I told probably the last time I was in Austin, but now I feel like the final version of it. So it's interesting, right? Because I go back and forth on it where I'm like, I always want to have new, that every time I come into town, I should have new, but that's impossible for me, at least. I mean, of course, I could talk to the crowd and make fun of them or something, but that's really not my bag. I don't want to do that. I want to have you come to my show and I want to entertain you for an hour. Like that's my job. I don't need you to do any work. I don't care what you do for a living because you've come to see what I do for a living. Um, so I think it's like that's my take on it. Like I work really hard to provide like a show and I'm very chill. So I'm not talking about like pyrotechnics, but like a solid hour of jokes where I'm trying to get you to laugh. So it takes me longer to rewrite. That's like my least favorite part of stand-up is starting over. Just probably like anybody, somebody comes over and knocks down your tower. Oh man, I gotta rebuild that whole thing. So I'm nearing the end of its completion, so hopefully it's as polished as it can be. Like I said, I feel rusty, but I'm very hard on myself. I'm a perfectionist, so by the end of the 4 shows, Saturday late, we'll be in good shape.
So go see the late Saturday show to get the best version of your act this weekend.
Yeah. Or I'll be so tired by then. No, I'm just kidding. Um, Yeah. Anyway,
Well,
sorry. I don't mean to be doom and gloom. I'm happy.
well, no, look, you are warning people that may have come seeing you the first time around that you're going to hear something similar. But one of my favorite things about stand up is watching a joke transform. Like the best, most recent example that I have is I saw Sean Patton by total, well, I guess the first time was happenstance. I saw him open for David Cross. Like 6 months later, I saw him at the Creek in the Cave. And then a year later, not quite a year later, probably 6 or 8 months later, I saw him at the Comedy Mothership. And I saw this same homeless guy joke, this homeless guy in New York City joke. And the like the outline was similar, but the way that he had punched it up each of those times, it was such a joy to just watch that like bud like bloom into this beautiful aromatic flower. And so it sounds like you may have
Yeah.
going on with the story that you're telling.
Yeah, I hope so. And I like that you like it. It's a good reminder because, this is not a knock at all, but it's like think about somebody like Bert Kreischer who's very popular, really told the same story from what I haven't seen him live, but I mean I've done random shows around LA with him. We're friendly, but I just mean he was apparently on the road. It sounds like telling the same story for like 10 years, which again, I'm not knocking. It's a fear of mine. Like, oh, I shouldn't do that because people don't they want to see new? And really, in some ways, people do want to hear the story again. So and I know that from my own experience in the sense that people think I'm going to tell the story about my dad's raccoons again. And I go, oh, that's like already in a special. Like, it's kind of dead to me.
Done. Yeah.
So again, this is not a judgment. It's more of like I'm really hard on myself and always want to produce. So then I'm like, but sometimes people love hearing the old. So it's a balance, I think, is the answer. But I don't want to get stuck saying the same thing for 10 years. But also I think sometimes people like seeing the growth and then um something they like, something
I,
from the old.
I think it says something like whether you're talking about like the machine bit or
Yeah, yeah, the machine.
what Dice does at the end of his act, where people demand it, like where he's tried not to do it and people actually will get upset with him after the show. Like it speaks to how great that bit originally was and how there's some comedy fans, and I'm not here to judge necessarily. It's not
Yeah,
style, but they want to hear that over. I mean, they want to hear the hits, if you
yeah,
and
right.
a lot of comics out there, and this is more of an old school thing. I think that's part of this revolution with stand up comedy is people who are willing to work hard, and as soon as they put something on tape and it's out there, like that material is burned, they're not going back there. Is that the old school way for a lot of people in the gosh, going back to the 50s, 60s, even in the 70s or 80s, they had their same set that they would roll out there regardless of where they were. And I guess the benefit at that time is that you weren't overexposing people to any individual joke because social media wasn't a thing. Now that social media is out there and you've got Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and HBO and all these different ways for specials to be put out, it really has forced the best of comedians to really rethink how they are going out there after that special is there for people to actually get to see.
Yeah, I am. It's an odd thing to deal with as somebody who's not like extremely online.
Yep. All right, Beth Stelling, she's going to be at Creek in the Cave Friday and Saturday night, shows at 7 and 9 each night. You can go to creekandcave.com to snag tickets, or you can go through her website, bethstelling.com, not Sterling, bethstelling.com. You can
Trey
also
Elling.
yeah. You can also check out her podcast, Sweethearts. It's Beth with Mo Welch. New episodes every Thursday. That's through his website as well. Beth, this has been a real joy. Thank you so much for the time today. Safe travels to and from Austin this weekend.
Thank you for having me. Reader Digest, most uplifting comic of the podcast.
You're still watching or listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or elsewhere. I would greatly appreciate you subscribing to this show if you have not already, and please do like today's episode. Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. Thanks to you for hanging out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. We'll talk to you next time on Books on Pod.